All right, let's get into the biggest games of the weekend. Heading into week number 9, is that right? Week number 9.
Hard to believe
Uh,
it is.
Moves fast. We've got a big progression here with a lot of big games, and we start. And I guess, listen, Utah at home, Rice Eccles Stadium. I think it's the two craziest fan bases in the Pac-12. Oregon versus Utah. Utah coming off that performance. My question is, I know this game's in Utah, and I know that matters in a big way because of how great that home field is. And Kyle Whittingham is maybe my favorite coach in all of college football. They are the most disciplined, well coached, prepared team maybe in the entire game. I actually think Dan Lanning is doing a really good job of preparing his team and keeping them focused. I think he's proving that he has got the head coaching chops. It helps to have a guy who started 55 games at quarterback. I am curious about last week's impact on this week. That's my big question is Oregon has the defense to slow down Utah. Utah put everything out there against USC. What else do they have? I like Oregon a lot in this game, and that hurts me to say out loud, considering my love of Utah.
I think first of all, if you're looking at the path for Utah to win, it starts with it's at home. It's in Salt Lake City. We've seen that these games this year between teams that are close in the top 25 often come down to home field advantage. So check mark in favor of Utah. I think just in general, key game for positioning in the Pac-12. I mean, you've got a lot of teams starting to cluster together. We think, Washington separated itself at the top by beating Oregon. Oregon wants to set up that rematch where you need to go on the road and win in Salt Lake City. Defensively, these two teams at the top of the Pac-12. Utah is second in the Pac-12 and Pac-12 only games scoring defense. Oregon is third. Oregon has been a little vulnerable on the rush. They're 66th nationally in success rate against the run. So this could be another huge game for Sione Vaki, Jaquindon Jackson. So I guess if I'm Utah, the formula here would be to do what you did against USC, which is get Vaki, get Jaquindon Jackson, some timely passing from Bryson Barnes. I think the flip side of this, though, is I think Oregon can meet the physicality of Utah better than USC did. And to your point, you go back and watch the Oregon-Washington game. We all know the fourth down things, but Oregon just seems to be a much more physical team than USC, and I think that will help them at this spot. Also, I just think offensively, you look at Oregon, 7.9 yards per play offensively, Utah 5.1. There's no question. I think defensively, these two teams are sort of at a stalemate, but the big edge in this game on offense goes to Oregon. So can Utah overcome that? And I think they're going to need to kind of get this game closer to a rock fight. And even then, I think that's a game that Oregon is comfortable playing.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. What makes Bucky Irving so great is his ability to break tackles. You can't get a clean shot on him. And what does Utah do extremely well? Well, they tackle extremely well. So that'll be a great sort of game within the game is yak, yards after contact for the Oregon running game. What's the number that Oregon has to get to where you say, I don't think Utah can get there? Is it 21? I mean, again, remember, Utah needed 14 to beat UCLA. So I don't what's the number that Oregon has to get to where you say, I don't think Utah can get there?
What about 31?
That's a lot.
That seems
That's
like
a lot
a
of
lot.
points. That's a lot of points on the road against the Utah defense.
Yeah, I think probably if you get to 27, 30, in that sort of range, I think I'd feel pretty good if I was Oregon. I also think too, I know Oregon's a big favorite here, but I don't want to just totally dismiss Kyle Whittingham's team because
They're only 6 point favorites.
Right. So about a touchdown here, and especially at home, where again, here's the two-time defending Pac-12 champion. They're an underdog. Probably not. I mean, people's going to pick them here in this game, and that usually works well for Utah. And I also think in a game like this, we saw this against Oregon and Washington, where mistakes like a turnover, third down, fourth down, red zone conversion. Like in a game like this, if you're Utah, if you're willing to probably give up some yardage in order to get stops in the red zone. And if you can sort of play ball control and score in the red zone, that's sort of your formula. I do think this matchup is tougher, especially like you mentioned, Utah expended a lot last week on the road. They are coming home, but Oregon, I think, much more equipped to battle at the line of scrimmage than USC was last week.
And the wheel route's now on film a lot. So Dan Lanning's
right.
at least watching the games.
Right.
So
not going against Alex Grinch this week.
Totally new strategy for the Oregon Ducks, watching the film of the team they're playing. It's just it's a new thing that Dan Lanning's trying out in Eugene. I think 24-27. If Oregon gets to 24-27, I don't know if Utah can get to that number against Oregon's defense, even at home, even with the great Whittingham calling plays. I just don't know if they can get to that number. So listen, sure to be dead wrong, but I like Oregon because of how the seasons have played out. I think Oregon they got a little test from Washington State and then sort of put their foot down. I like how they responded in that moment after the Washington loss. I think they come into this game knowing exactly what's at stake, totally focused, ready to go. Seeing what Utah did last week as a wake up call. There's not a lot that Utah can hide on film anymore. Like truly, Alex, I don't know if you know this, but like there, there's they've kind of like how many more things does Kyle Whittingham have up his sleeve? Like at this point, it's just he's using defensive backs in the backfield. Like what else you got? I don't know. So,
we've talked a lot about how much we like Kyle Whittingham and think he's one of the best coaches in college football. I think it's pretty clear though that this is the team that he's got now because Cam Rising and Brant Keith here, the announced after the game, are going to try and do the medical redshirt thing. So that could be good for Utah as they go into the Big 12 next year. But in this game specifically, I don't want to dismiss Utah because they're at home.
No,
and I trust Kyle Whittingham a lot. But I think I'm going to take Oregon in a close one in Salt Lake City. So give me the Ducks, but close.
I like the Ducks as well, and I am still in complete awe of Utah.